Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar, Roadmap to Reopening the OR, where we're going to focus primarily today on the topic of quick changeover in the ORs. We believe it will be a key to allow ORs to recover in the post-COVID area. We're going to give everybody a couple of minutes to sign in. As you know, folks do take a minute or two to time to log in and figure out their way around. So let's give everybody a minute or two. In the meantime, just to set expectations, if you signed in hoping to hear anything about how to deal with infection control issues post-COVID area, this is not what we're going to be talking about. Our goal here is to focus on how to reopen the OR and how to be able to do that extra volume that will be necessary to do in the post-COVID area. So we're going to be talking about that and how to be able to increase that volume. So with that being said, let me close this right here so I don't get any noise. Sorry about that. So we're going to be using a presentation here, and I shall remain as a talking head here. So here's the topic: Roadmap to Reopen the OR. And many folks have discussed the issue of this is how we reopen. And in most cases, what I have heard, it seems incomplete because they tell you all the things you cannot do on the basis of concerns around COVID. All that is very valid. However, there is one thing that they seem to be leaving out of the question, and that is the fact that there is a tsunami coming your way. So, first of all, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Gerard. I am the principal in charge of the Link Hospital practice with the Leonardo Group. I have been doing this for many, many years. And I have co-authored several books on topics around the implementation of lean principles and tools for the hospitals, and for manufacturing. That is where I started my career. But I have been working with hospitals since the year 2002, where after my first project, I ended up publishing the results in the Cath Lab Digest. And from then, it's been working primarily with hospitals. So you can read this at your leisure, but yes, I've been doing this for quite some time. And as I mentioned, one of the main set of tools that we use in our practice is this thing called lean. And if you do your research, and I hope you do, you'll find this is the definition that our friends at the Lean Enterprise Institute use. And it makes a lot of sense. Systematic approach to do what? Identify and eliminate waste, right? And this is the part where it sort of breaks down for hospitals, because it's through continuous improvement by flowing the product at the pull of the customer. And then you clinicians look at it thinking, wait a second, product? What product are we talking about? The patient, right? My mother, your son, is that a product? That's not a product. So we have this definition. My company, the Leonardo Group, we believe this is a better definition for hospitals, but all the elements are there, right? Continuous improvement is there. Patient satisfaction now, treatment outcome, employee development. Why employee development? Because without staff, there is no lead. There is no continuous improvement. How do you do that? Through the elimination of waste, elimination of errors, and improvement in patient flow. We believe this is a better definition. All the elements are there, but it caters better to hospitals. Why is this important? This is important because there is a substantial amount of waste in everything clinicians do. Now, don't interpret this as my saying clinicians are not doing things right. Much on the contrary. Clinicians are burdened with suboptimal processes that force them to spend time doing things they were not trained to do, that they don't care for. A long time ago, was it that long ago? Yeah, around 2008, a client asked us to conduct a time study to see how their nurses were spending time, right? And we agreed to do that. We put together a team, and one thing that I learned in the time of Google is that if you think of something that you think is an original idea, somebody else thought of it. So do a little Googling. And we found out that somebody else had done a study that was a lot more statistically significant than mine. I was going to do a study for one hospital. These folks did a study for a total of 768 nurses, right? And make a long story short, they identified the fact that nurses spend their times in three primary thirds. 1/3 walking, 1/3 at the computer. And those of you who have to deal with your EHRs know that. And 1/3 doing everything else, including patient care. So that itself tells you that you start behind. So what I am saying here is that anything that is not patient care, we should look at that as waste. Now, it doesn't mean it can all be eliminated or minimized, but we should be looking for ways to increase the amount of time that nurses and any clinicians spend with patients. And that brings me to the OR. We need to look for ways to increase the utilization of an OR. Every time an OR is not doing a surgery, every time it's not being utilized for surgery, let's call it waste. And that includes turnover. I know it's necessary. Of course it's necessary, but the less we do, the less turnover, the more surgeries we do. And many of the ways in which we see that time being spent are in all these forms of waste. And I'm sure that if you have a group dedicated to lean at your hospital, you have seen this. As a matter of fact, let me ask of you to see how many of you do have an improvement department at your hospital. And you will see these forms of waste, right? Motion, walking around looking for stuff, right? Transportation, moving the stuff. Motion refers to the person, transportation refers to things, right? Waiting for instruments, for meds, for equipment, right? And ineffective use of computer, not having the right training and spending a lot of time charting after a procedure. One thing we have seen, the reason why we asked this question, one thing we have seen is that some of these internal lean departments are a little shy to get into the OR. For some reason, they don't get into the OR, which it misses the point, right? Because the OR is the greatest source of revenue for any hospital. So I'll leave this poll open for a couple more minutes for people to answer. And you should be asking them to help you out. Now let's get into our topic. A few facts for you to consider. Nowadays, hospitals are losing money. And folks that are not very connected to hospitals say, how is that possible, right? You're full. How is that possible? Well, yes, full, but not carrying out the procedures that bring revenue to the hospital, right? Staff is being worked to exhaustion. Elective surgeries are being delayed, still being delayed. Some of them are still opening, but opening slowly. So there will be a pent-up demand for elective procedures. And elective is the mother of all misnomers, right? Because elective is anything that's not emergent. And we know some of them, if you need a new knee, that's not elective. You need a new hip, that's not elective, right? Somehow you will have to deal with that extra volume, because that extra volume, for one thing, the patient needs it. For another thing, the hospital needs the revenue, right? And you will be expected to do all that while saving money. So our point to you is the two places to go look for this. One of them is, when hospitals try to save money, they focus on two things: people and materials. And people means time, and materials mean money. So one thing that you will be asked to do, that's pretty much guaranteed, is the new normal will require more surgeries, right? The new normal will require more surgeries, and you will be pushed into it. And that is where our concern comes in. And that is the fact that I can foresee a future. And, feel free to send me a chat message if you think this is not accurate, but I can see a future where hospitals, or better said, the OR, perioperative services, surgical services, required to work 6 days a week, 12 hours a day for starters, right? Because we need to get those patients in, we need to get those surgeries going, we need to get that revenue, right? So there is a tsunami coming your way. And that tsunami, you either surf it, or that tsunami you will drown in that tsunami. So we expect to see an increase in volume. Now, let me ask you this question. Do you expect a temporary blip? Now, that temporary blip may be long, but a temporary blip in the number of procedures in the near future? I can see that at most hospitals, because if you needed that knee, that hip, that elective surgery in middle of March, you're still waiting. And there is a very good chance that that volume will happen. So do you see that happening at your place? Like to hear from you. I'm going to leave this poll open for a bit. So there are many, many aspects, and infection control will be one, and equipment availability will be one, and staff availability will be one. Many aspects to the recovery of hospitals. And today I want to mention two, but focus on one. The two that will enable the OR to increase volumes and save money are these two. These are the two pieces of the puzzle that will act as the main enabler for you. One is OR changeover. Why? Because that will enable you, without killing staff, to do more procedures. And the other one will be materials management. And it's not just about beating suppliers to get lower prices. Prices are not the issue there. Availability, having the right supplies at the right time in the right quantities when you need them. That is going to be the case. Today, I am going to focus on OR changeover. We will do another one on materials in the future. Again, I don't want to keep you for too long here today. So let's talk about changeover. Why does it matter? It matters because it enables the OR to increase volumes without increases in staff. What is quick changeover? We use the term changeover because we believe it's the best term, but turnover is another term. Some people use TAT as turnover time. You know what I am talking about. Between surgery 1 and surgery 2, there is a period of time during which you need to turn over the room, right? You need to tear down, you need to clean, you need to set up so you can do the next procedure. Quick changeover is a set of techniques to reduce that time. That time can never be eliminated. That time can never be zero, but it can be reduced so you can, for one thing, and most importantly, improve the quality of the setup for the next surgery, and also reduce the time and increase flexibility. That is what quick changeover is all about. The goal is to improve patient flow, keeps patient moving, right, by reducing the time between the departure of a patient and the arrival of the next, and in that way, you continue using the OR for surgeries and not for changeover. That's the goal. That's where we want to get to. Benefits are many, and in normal times, I go through all these benefits, right? The reduced changeover time leads to higher job satisfaction because you're not running around, leads to clear expectations and staff involvement and patients have all good things. But right now, increase in volume is the focus. All the other benefits are real, they'll come, but right now, the main reason to do or to focus on quick changeover is the increase in volume, because volume is coming. There is a roadmap to improve the changeover in the OR. This roadmap, this is available to you. You can download this. And basically, what we teach in our workshops, primarily within the context of projects, we don't teach this just to teach it because we don't see results. So what we do is we teach quick changeover within the context of a project. That is why later I'll tell you a little bit about a program that we're started because we want to help out hospitals. We are taking these programs that we normally do live, we're taking them online. So hospitals can do more of it and they can do it quicker. Normally what we have here is those first steps that you see on the upper left-hand corner of the slide. That is all the preparation. Yes. Then it starts with the assessment, the data gathering, the execution. And the execution, by the time you do a project with us, you will be repeating separate conversion line, separate conversion line. Those are the three main phases of any quick changeover program. Separate conversion line. We will talk about those in a minute. Then sustaining that through the implementation of 7S, and then presenting and propagating. That is what this roadmap talks about. And the roadmap is formatted so it has a time for preparation and a time for deployment. And normally that is a 3-to-1 relationship. That's normally how we work with our clients. 3 weeks of preparation for 1 week deployment. And normally in 1 week, we do a pilot project. We do one service line. And by the end of the week, that service line has reduced changeover times. And when it comes to changeover times, I'd like to ask you, because there is such a thing as a turnover time that is too short, that is dangerously short, that is unsafe. But normally what we like to do when we get started is to aim for the under 30, right? Aim for the under 30. And so that means if you are in the 60-minute changeover we're looking for the 30-minute reduction, right? Now, it all needs to be done within reason. But normally that is what we're looking for, to bring you very quickly under the 30-minute turnover. So, as I said, what are the steps? Preparation, yes, we will do the preparation with you. We'll help you out with that, right? And that will include an assessment and figuring out what are the main barriers that you have today. Some of those issues with having not having the right locations for staging equipment, or having issues with case cards not being picked complete, or too many case cards being in waiting, or not having the right PL packs where you need them, or the supplies, all that stuff to be done, right? We're going to get to a point at which during the deployment week, we're going to go through these 3 steps. Separate, convert, streamline, as you can see on this slide. Separate, convert, streamline. What does that mean? We'll go through these in a little bit of detail during this webinar. So separate, convert, streamline. Now, one point I want to make is that the first step, separation, right? Separating, and we will talk about what is that we're separating, steps of work, really. That tends to be the easier and where you get the majority of the benefits. 30-50% of your benefits you're going to get from there. That's why it's highlighted in this slide. However, if you are just too happy with that and you say, oh, look at the benefits we got, we're good, then you're leaving money on the table. The next step, the convert, and we'll talk about that in a minute, the convert is the hardest, that requires the most creativity. Sorry about that. Requires the most creativity. And then the last one, streamline, is where you improve, when you improve the efficiency in all of them. Now, let's talk about this. What is that we're separating, convert, streamlining? Steps of work. What are the steps of work? Basically, you are going to gather data by following all the different actors in the OR turnover, and you're going to document the steps. And then you're going to classify those steps into internal and external. What's an internal step? An internal step is a step that can only be accomplished when the OR suite is not in use. So whenever the OR is not in use, so there cannot be a patient in the room. External are steps of work that can be performed when the OR suite is in use. So these are preparation steps for surgery 2 while surgery 1 is taking place. Internal, external, you will classify those. In the preparation phase, there will be quite a bit of work. In documenting the changeover is going to be the majority of it. So figuring out how are all the different steps carried out by all the different actors, because there will be a circulating nurse, a surgical tech, an AVS tech, and maybe an anesthesia nurse if you have one, right? You will have all those different steps. Those different steps need to be documented in some way, somehow. And as you notice, the little fella there holding the video camera is because we're very partial to documenting the steps using video. We believe video is a very effective way of doing it. However, there are limitations, right? You may have a policy in your hospital against the use of video, but there are ways of overcoming some of that. In one case, I will give you one example at one of my hospital clients where we talked to staff and we asked if they would be comfortable being videoed. We had enough no's that we ended up not videoing faces, we ended up videoing feet, and it actually worked out really well. However method of gathering the steps you have, then you will have to document those steps. For that, you will use some sort of documenting. We won't go into propose using the standard word definition, but basically, the goal here is to end up with a list where you have step done by whom, right? You will sit down, you need to sit down with staff and review the steps. I observe you doing this. Is that the way you normally do this? Yeah? You invite feedback. And then once you have that list, you classify into internal and external. Now, you will end up with a list like this. Now, again, this list here is not there so you can read it, right? Because as you can tell, it's pretty small print. But this is real data from one of our real clients, right? And what we have here are step. And then you're going to see going to the right that it says roll 1, roll 2, roll 3, roll 4. And those were the circulator, the surgical tech, the EVS tech, and who does what. And for one thing, you're going to be able to see that some folks are more loaded than others, right? So that rebalancing is one of the first things we do. Then you're going to see going to the right that we have two more columns. One says int, and the other one ext, internal, external. So you're going to put a little X, a check mark, something that says this is an internal step, this is an external step. And this list could be quite lengthy, will be quite lengthy, because you're documenting all the steps. Here I'm showing you just one page from documenting an entire changeover for one service line. And then again, this was one of the first programs we did with this client. Before we talk about separate, converse, streamline, there is one aspect of the turnover that we always pay special attention to, and that is the cleaning procedure. And for the cleaning procedure, and maybe sometimes for other to document other movements, we'd like to use this tool called the spaghetti diagram. And what you see here, before you send me a chat message saying, hey, that looks pretty cheap and pretty not fancy, and that's exactly the way I like it. What you see there is a sketch of an OR. Right there at the center is the OR table, and the lines you see there is a person that took that sketch, placed the pencil at the time the EVS tech came in, and followed the EVS person, the EVS tech, with the pencil, and he or she was walking. The red arrow there refers to the door of the OR. So look at the number of times this person was going back and forth, and entering and exiting the OR suite. So this put on display the lack of standardization around this process. So this is one of the tools we use. This is just one of them. Right? We also sometimes use file stream mapping if it makes sense. Tools are not the point here, but the one that is the point is the list. You will end up with that list. You will classify it into external and internal. And the first thing we will ask you to do is to take the list of external steps. First, external steps. Ignore all the internals for just a few hours. Focus on the external steps, and the first thing you're going to do is do the first phase, go through the first phase of the program and do the separating. Separating what? Here, what we're thinking, what we're doing is taking all the external steps and figuring out how can they be done ahead of time. a quintessential external step that sometimes, unfortunately, is done internally. The quintessential external step is acquiring the case card, acquiring the equipment. Could the case card for case 2 be acquired and staged while case 1 is taking place? That is what we mean by doing that work ahead, staging. By staging and choreographing, we see a large number of benefits, a large number of savings. So here is all about preparation. When we talk about separating, talk all about preparation. I think separating is a bit of a misnomer. You separated already. Here, what you're doing is focusing on the external steps to do them ahead. Now, one thing you may notice, and I have noticed this many times, is that in looking at the list of steps, pretty much everything is done internally, meaning we waited until wheels out, right? The patient left. Now we start the changeover. And there are many steps that you look through the list and you see that they should so very clearly be external, right? That you start focusing on those. And I couldn't fault you for doing that. In many cases, we say, well, that's so egregious. It should be done externally. Let's focus on that first. But that is the next step. That is the converting internal to external. First, be methodic. Go through the external steps. Figure out how to do those ahead. The case card, the equipment, the do not open items. All those things that can be done ahead. Once you get plans for all those, and this is what we do with our clients, focus on that first, come into the next session with those plans. We will discuss those plans, put them in practice, and then when all those external steps are figured out, we put a big check mark on those, then we go back to the list. And when we go back to the list, now we focus on only the internal steps and we start asking, can any of these be done externally? And in doing them externally, then we put them through the ringer of the external steps and figure out which ones can be done ahead and how they can be done ahead. Normally, this is the hardest part, but it requires a little more creativity, but it's also very rewarding. Example of an internal step that cannot be made external. Cleaning the floor of the OR, right? The cleaning itself, you cannot make that external. The patient needs to be out of the room. As a matter of fact, everybody needs to be out of the room so you can clean the floors. Fine. So that one, unlikely. Are there some things of the cleaning procedure that could be done externally? Now we're getting a little closer. We're looking a little more fine points, like staging the cleaning cart ahead of time. So when we say, okay, now we go clean, now we go walk around all over creation looking for the cart. Don't do that. Have the cart staged. It'll save you a couple of minutes. And you say, well, a couple of minutes, well, they all add up, right? So that was an internal step that you made external, acquiring the cleaning cart and staging it, right? So then you keep looking through the internal steps and see, for example, that the straps to the OR table, they are wiped right on the OR table, and that takes 1 minute and 35 seconds. Is it possible to put in place an exchange program by which you have another set of OR straps that are cleaned of the room and present it to the room. So all we do is a swap. That saves 1 minute and some out of the internal time. And that is what we need to save, because the internal time is what defines wheels out, wheels in. So that is the second and probably one of the hardest parts. However, I myself find it to be one of the most rewarding. Now, you will get to a point at which you need to say, okay, we stop here. We know what's external. We get that done ahead. We know what's internal. We accept it, right? The floor needs to stay inside the room, cannot clean the floor outside the room, bring it in, right? But now we need to go back to the steps, and now we need to change our focus and start thinking pit crew, right? To change a tire is to change a tire. You have to change the tire. You have to loosen all the lug nuts. You have to take off the tire. You have to go get the next wheel. You have to put it on. You have to put the lug nuts on. You have to torque them, right? But one thing is to do it the way I do it, and one thing is to do it the way those guys do it, the Ferrari team or the NASCAR guys. Have you seen those guys changing a tire? It's just crazy. So pit crew. What those guys have done for changing a tire, gas in a car, that's what we need to do for the cleaning procedure, for emptying and relining all the trash bins. That is the last step. Separate, convert, streamline. Take the external steps and do them ahead. Take internal steps, make external, and figure out how to do them ahead. And then take all the external, all the internal, and think pit crew. That's the way you carry this out. Some of the streamlining ideas, maybe doing work in parallel, right? Maybe storing in closer proximity, maybe different techniques that for maintenance and repair. All different ideas. You can read this by yourself. Now, few examples. And some of you may already do this. And I'm not telling you, take this and copy it. I'm telling you, use this as inspiration. In observing the turnover, the changeover, noticed that for one thing, the circulator was doing approximately 80% of all the work. First thing, let's rebalance, right? So it's not the circulator doing all the work. Now, in your case, you may notice that the work is biased towards the surgical tech. Rebalance. Yeah, so that was one thing. And one thing we noticed was that the circulator was pulling sheets and arm pads and all the supplies that were needed for setting up the OR table during internal time, walking around, picking all these things one at a time. And what we did, we developed the burrito. What is a burrito? A burrito because the nurse decided to use the sheet as a carrier, put all the supplies in, fold it. I looked at it and said, hey, it looks like a burrito. We ended up calling it a burrito. So what happened? We had this made external and put together by somebody else. Really, you don't need a nursing license to pick those items, and assemble the burritos for the next 3 or 4 cases and stage in MetroCart right outside the room, right? In other hospital, they happen to have, and I don't know, maybe you do too, one of those substerile rooms. We set them up in this substerile room. In all my OR designs, and this is how I spend a lot of my time, designing new OR departments, right? New perioperative services departments. I always like to have a space right outside, an alcove right outside for some of this staging, right? This alone And then again, you may say, really that simple? Really that simple? That saved 2 minutes. That alone saved 2 minutes. So again, I'm not telling you to copy it. I'm telling you to get inspired by it, right? In all my designs, I always like to have a staging location right outside the room, either a closed cabinet or an open shelf like one of these Metro cards. Yeah. Another example, and this was one of my clients in Indianapolis. We designed the entire peri-op services department and the store process department for them. The circulator, again, was spending time picking individual meds, right? And that was done during internal time. So we went to medication kits. And we also brought in a satellite pharmacy. It worked for us. It was a big to-do, but we documented the project, and we saw great savings in bringing a satellite pharmacy. Some of you may like it, may not. Satellite pharmacy did work for them. Again, I'm telling you to do it. I'm telling you it worked for them. And in a satellite pharmacy, they put together kits, and those kits, boom, delivered to the OR, right? Whatever you use, whatever you don't use, you return, and those kits got restocked. And for emergency cases, there was a Pyxis machine with some of those kits, right? That saved, for the circulator, 3 minutes per case. And then again, 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there. It will save you time in no time. So this, again, picking meds was another case. And a big one was the cleaning procedure for this one client, right? In which we came up with a method to go in a very deliberate, standardized manner. In this case, was a perfectly counterclockwise way. And this worked for this one service. It happened to be spine, for orthospine for this one hospital. And they used these rooms, and they in every case, what made sense there was to go in counterclockwise motion, top to bottom, clean the room, save 5 minutes of time. And that did include also finding a proper cart, which, by the way, they borrowed from another department for the EVS department. So that worked for them. The cleaning procedure always requires extra attention. One thing we also noticed, and in some cases, I have myself stopped the project saying, guys, until we clean this up, we don't move on, right? And that is 7S. 7S, 5S refers to housekeeping and organization. And many folks like to call it 5S, which is the original name, right? Sort, shine, set in order, sort, standard, and sustain. And then what we do notice there, steps 6 and 7, safety and security. For hospital safety and security, make a lot of sense. Now, why? Because, and then again, this is from one of our projects. We were supposed to work with this, right? Go acquire equipment for a changeover there. See the before picture? That's real. We didn't make that up. We didn't go mess something up so we can take a good picture. That was real. So how long do you think that's going to take you? It's going to take more time than it should. That's the after. I need the stirrups. There they are. You can acquire them quickly. And then again, you can say, well, Gerard, that is common sense. Yeah, I never said that was going to be uncommon sense, right? And again, quick access, having equipment and having supplies organized. In my OR designs, when the client can afford it, and I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about space, I like to have 3 cabinets in each room. If you can afford it, I like to have 3 cabinets in each room. Common supplies, meaning every room has exactly the same. Everybody needs cautery tips, right? So in every room, all the same supplies. And that's normally around 100 supplies. And then specialty supplies, another cabinet, and positioning devices in my third cabinet. That's what I like to do if I can afford the space in my OR design. Some of you cannot, but when I'm starting from scratch, that's what I'd like to do, and that saves a lot of time. Now, we're coming to the end, and I would like to do some recommendations. First of all, in the middle, Quick Changeover in the OR. That's our book. I co-authored that book with my co-principal, Richard Ron. And we're making that available to you for download. So please go ahead and download. We'd like to make that available to you for free. And then a couple more recommendations. One of them is the book by Norman Bodek, The Idea Generator. Well written, good stories, and talks about how to make small improvements. And then the Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande. Who knew that a surgeon could write so well? I pretty much read everything he writes. He's an excellent writer. And this one goes to not exactly Quick Changeover, but an excellent tool for Quick Changeover, which is the checklist. I'm always careful in your checklist because I know that sometimes you clinicians are being, killed by checklists. So this book, we wrote it with you clinicians in mind. It's not a very long book, goes straight to the point, right? It has only 11 chapters, 100 pages, 101 pages. At the end of each chapter, we have a quick quiz. So it activates different part of the brain, helps you remember, has a bias for action, has all the examples that we thought would fit. Yeah. Now, we have been hearing from many hospitals to help them with Quick Changeover. And this is a program we do live with hospitals. We're there with you, and only so many we can do at a time. So we have decided to help out by bringing this online. And it's not just training, because training is very good, but as much as there is a learning curve, there is a forgetting curve. And we don't want to do just training. We want to do a program. So what we have decided to do is to basically mimic the program we do live by providing you with recording lessons and homework, and then coaching sessions with us remotely. The program is based on the book. So read the book, and if you're interested, give us a call. But there is more, because only so much you can put in a book, only so much you can put on the recorded lessons, which, by the way, in the recorded lessons, we realized that all the interactions we can have with you live, we cannot have them during a recorded lesson. So the recorded lessons are a little longer than when we teach live. When we teach live, we try to get done in 2 or 3 hours. The lessons for the program end up being around 5 to 6. And then there's a homework, and then there is the 2 coaching sessions a week with us. In that way, you will learn from your colleagues, and you will learn from the experts at Leonardo Group. So if you're interested, go ahead and click on that link, get that link, and go to the program, see if that is something that interests you. We decided to bring the program online because we can do more, and we can make it a lot more affordable to our clients. When it's all said and done, it's about a quarter of the cost of doing a live program, and you will get very